don't know me, I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon, time will tell. You are telling me the things you're gonna do for me.
Like everybody. Everybody's gonna need a couple.
I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the streets.
Let somebody else out before I let you go.
Taking it to the streets.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Journey to Service, Part 3. We're having conversations with one Calgary Mayoralty candidate, Lord Randall Earl Kaiser, and he's back again this week. Welcome, Randall.
Hey, William, thank you very much. And yeah, we're going to do this every week, and we're hoping we'll get a lot more views and a lot of more people on board. Things are moving along nicely, so let's take it away.
Well, actually, that's a good point. I'm going to quickly ask you for an update. Last week, you were, 66, that magic number. You had 66 signatures to get to the 100 mark so that you could enter yourself in as mayor officially. How is that coming along?
It's coming great. You know, I've had so many people say to me, well, give me a sheet. And they do that at the office. Like they gave me a bunch of extra sheets and said, well, you just got to make sure that the person who's collecting the autographs for you, the signatures, they call it, that, you know, they're doing it legitimately and all this kind of stuff. I said, can I take those out of my package? And I left them on the table. I said, if I'm not talking eye to eye with these 100 people, there's no point in my mind. I want to talk to each one of them. So I'm up to 86. So we got another 20 this week. And, you know, I'm not in a rush anyway on this. Like there's lots of time. We got till September, I think, to even get our submission in. But I'm determined now to speak to each and every one of these people and get their opinion. And, you know, if you are saying, I like what you're saying and everything, but I'd rather reserve my autograph, and that's just fine too, you know. So I've had some way more, well, not way more, probably hitting, I don't know, 8 out of 10, I'm going to say, but that number is, you know, there is a few that just want to reserve their right or come back later after I've looked at your YouTube channel or something like that. I've heard that too, you know. So yeah,
Awesome. That sounds good. I'm hoping for you this week will be the week that you get to the 100 mark, and you can move forward from there and actually make yourself official.
That's right. Well, and you know, I'm going to shoot over 100 because there's definitely some of these that could be questioned whether or not they're official citizens. You know how that whole process works. So I'm going to just relax and keep doing this for a little while longer yet. Probably, I don't know. I'll just let the time unfold. Let's put it that way.
Is there a deadline time-wise to get to the 100 and submit it?
You know, I'm not sure about that, and maybe we'll look into that this week, William. But I know September is when you have to be in, you know, or out. Like you can get your deposit back, I think the 21st of September if you decide to just bail.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the only timelines I know, but I'll look into it and see this week. I'll check into that tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, now I wanted to, we were talking off camera before we started today about different, you know, rallies and things that you've gone to this week. And you also mentioned you saw some of the other candidates in action already. And the thing I was wondering is that some of these obviously candidates are going to be spending quite a bit of money to put into their campaigns and get their campaigns rolling and get, you know, the placards out and all the different things that you need to really get your name and your face out there. Do you, Randall, have any corporate backing or any money from anyone at this point?
Well, what we're doing is that our nonprofit organization the funding that's coming to that from off ledger asset backed accounts, the people that are involved in that are saying use it, like basically they're just saying use it. So I'm not going to set up an account specifically and attract donations at all. Like I don't have any interest in that. In fact, I had a really divine little thing happen. There was a man running for governor in New Jersey, and this was shared through a friend of mine, okay? Running for governor in New Jersey, and a candidate, of course, they haven't had the election yet there either, but he was just putting his name in as candidate. And he had a flood of donations come in, like a flood. I don't want to mention the number, well, I'll tell you, it was $250,000 that came into this account from people that just like loved him, right? And he got disqualified because of that. He hadn't accounted for it properly or something like that. Maybe it was, the bad guys thinking, oh, this guy's a threat, so we should, make sure red flag him or something like that. Who the hell knows? But he basically got disqualified. I don't know if he's got time to get back in or to settle this situation or whatever, but that was a really good reminder for me. As soon as I saw that, I thought, I don't want any money, to get this started. We've got some funding in place. We're going to count on social media a lot and count on this walking around the streets a lot. I'm getting recognition that way, like I'll speak at public settings and stuff like that. If I don't get invited, I'll invite myself and see what happens, and just keep it going that way. But as far as corporate backing, nothing. And it will be through our coordination through these funds that are coming from off ledger that are designated to Randall Kaiser and Lord Randall Kaiser, and our initial start into this process of funding projects. So this is going to be included in that project, and we're not going to spend very much money at it. Let's put it that way, because I'm not into that. If we don't get the recognition from, our media and, mainstream media, then what's the point? That's what they're there for, is to promote people that are running for mayor. And if they don't promote that, then they're not doing a very good job.
Now, I'm wondering as well, you mentioned projects, of course, and that starts to make me think, okay, every candidate has certain things that they're passionate about, certain things that they want to see for the city. Obviously, we know from our previous discussions that the number one thing I would say, it sounds like, and you can confirm that for me, is the comfort income, is that every Calgarian will get a comfort monthly income. We were thinking or suggesting or talking about possibly around $3,000 a month, based on the knowledge that you have with the banking system and being able to do that. Now, that brings up a whole bunch more questions that I'd like to talk about a little bit. And one of them is, if everyone's got their needs met as far as cash goes, what's the need to go to work? I mean, will that not create a problem where all of a sudden no one's inspired to go to their job because maybe half the people in Calgary don't like their jobs? I mean, what kind of transition will we be able to make? And I also want to talk about projects, but I'll let you answer that one first.
Sure. Okay, so would the average person, if they had their comfort needs met, that 3,000, 3,300 or whatever that number is, just stop working altogether? I don't think so. Like, I really don't. I think that the people that are collecting, the relief, as they call it right now, from this silly government programs and stuff, we all, because I'm in on that too, and we all still want to contribute, okay? And contribute isn't so much, I don't know, like how to say this, but I think there's an awakening happening in the world where we're not so worried about ourselves. And if once we got that worry for ourselves out of the way, that we truly are a race of beings, a species of animals that want to contribute, that really do. And, there might be some, young people, or I don't even want to say young people, that want to just stay home and watch video games. But, eventually that's going to start costing money. Those things cost money. And are you going to take away from your comfort income to buy a new Xbox or whatever the case is, and see, that's what I mean. Like, it's a comfort income, but it's not excess. And the excess will come from what I wanted to speak about. And I hope that was enough to answer your question, William. But then I want to roll right into the next part of this,
Yeah,
which is,
you can go ahead for sure. I do have a little bit more I want to talk about that, because I know that there will be at least some people that would say, okay, well, now I don't have to do that job I don't like anymore, but maybe they'll want to, hopefully they'll want to do something else, and it'll give them the freedom and the creativity to do whatever else that is, whether that is a contribution to their fellow man in Calgary, or whether it's a creative project they want to do themselves. I definitely have some questions around that, but you have something on your mind, so I want you to share that, and then we can come back to this.
sure. And this is where we get into that discussion that we've had in the first couple of videos about socialism versus capitalism, right? And this duality mentality that people are going to try and pin me down into one of those categories. I'm saying that debt is a complete, utter illusion, that we've proven in the last year that the governments around the world, not just in one nation or another, around the world, have shown us that they can create however much money they want. And then they add on at the end, but it's debt. We have to pay it back. Give me a break. Give me a frickin' break. I heard it's 300 billion. Is that a number that you've heard too, William, as far as how much more money has been added to the Canadian so-called debt from this COVID thing so far? Is that the number you've heard?
To be honest with you, I don't actually follow national politics, so I don't have an answer for you there.
And I don't either, but I think that was a number that somebody said, and it makes sense to me when you look at what's been going on top of, William, all of the infrastructure programs here in Calgary that are just expanding exponentially, billions of dollars being spent. Okay, so let's just think about that for a minute, okay, and say, oh, Kaiser, you're talking in a socialist strategy and we're going to have to pay back that debt. Well, we haven't paid it back ever to start with. If we've added another 3 or 5 or how many $100 billion because of COVID, well, then you do the math on that, folks, not me and William, and figure out how much at even at 1.1% interest or whatever, figure out how much money that is that we're now going to owe back. And where the hell are they going to get that from? Okay, where are they going to get that from? From taxes? Give me a break. Taxes are so insane, it's not even funny. People will come to me and say, well, it's taxes that are keeping our books balanced and this and that. Bullshit. There's 40%. I looked this one up of the workforce in Canada that works for the government. Okay, 40%. So 60% of us are out there supposedly covering the rest of that, because it's not only the taxes that are coming off of that 40%, all of their wages are coming out of the government too. All of their wages, all of the programs for social assistance, all of the programs for pension plans, all of that stuff is coming out of some dreamed up frickin' budget that supposedly is getting enough money most of the time, except for this COVID thing, most of the time we can get pretty close to balancing it. Bullshit is all I'm calling on that. So don't put me in that socialist category. I'll tell you, folks, that drives me nuts when people want to, oh, he's a liberal, he wants to give everybody a basic income. That's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So I'm going to flip to the capitalist side here now and say that our process is going to prove to the world that this unlimited amount of asset-backed funding that's off ledger in the banks is going to come through. Okay, and you watch those projects and they're not going to be destined to the age-old or decade-old globalist agenda of Walmart and Cargill getting the lion's share, and mom and pop stores, see you later, foreclosure. Foreclosure to who? Foreclosure to what? Because the creditor, the mom and pop store who autographed a document, gave that to the bank and gave them a promise back to pay. Pay for what? Pay the bank for creating the money or getting it from this, structure that we've got? That's, see my passion. I needed to get this out right off the bat, brother. And it's like,
I'm letting you run, Randall.
thank you, because it drives me nuts to think in terms of limit, okay? And limit is a corporate word, like limited, right? Limited is your company name. No, company is different than a limited corporation, but they put that all in one category. You can choose where you want, a company or a limited corporation. Well, just the whole idea of limited or limit is just corporate in my mind. And all of that is about what? Limit or lack, okay? And that is complete insanity. When we think about, I'll take either one of these two structures, okay? There's two structures when it comes to creation of credit. One is the autograph, okay? The autograph, fractional reserve lending, the idea that you're making a promise to the bank prior to them giving you credit, that whole thing. That's one aspect. The other is asset backed, from current assets that are like oil and gas that are off ledger, as I've said before, too much money there to bring into the economy, so they hold them off ledger, and the off ledger accounts that have been there for hundreds of years, the global, or there I use that word, but the heritage accounts, okay? And these are backed by gold that's been mined for thousands of years. And nobody can ever tell me that, oh, we only have a certain amount in Fort Knox. And even if you did, who the hell cares? Because you're putting a value on that gold or that silver or that, and that value is fluctuating. Gold alone, they use as a commodity and as collateral, okay? So that's dreamed up, and it's another creation aspect of money. It's got nothing to do with a limited thing, because you're just creating it. And if it's limited, even if it is limited, the volume, which I know it's not, then because there's lots of it underneath flowing through the veins of Mother Earth too. But even if it is limited, well, then you're limiting it by putting a value on it. And that's done by this banking system. Okay, we're saying gold's worth $1,200 an ounce today. Oh, next week it's worth $1,400. Next week it's worth $1,300. Why? There's the same amount there. It's just a bullshit story, the whole thing. So my preaching to everyone is going to be continually, every video, I'm going to take a minute or two to do this. Ask yourself, ask your government official, ask the protesters who are protesting the government, who want to govern the government. Ask them, who are we in debt to? Who are we in debt to? Does debt exist in your mind? Is it reality in your mind? Does lack exist in your mind? Because if it does, you need to start thinking about something else, because there is no lack. There's no lack of the amount of money that we can produce. And they've proved it to us this year with this expansion, just because we had a pandemic, my ass. 2,000 people have died in this province out of 4.5 million in a year. On average, we lose 25,000 people a year. So is that easy to adjust those numbers to say that there was a COVID-related death? Because that's all they call it when they say the 2,000. It's COVID-related, right? Nobody dies from COVID. They die from some other symptoms, a weak system, heart failure, pneumonia, those kind of things. But to do this, it just is, and we're going to get past it.
Now, you bring up, there's a lot, again, there's a lot there, and we can go in many different directions, but I did want to actually touch on C19 in our conversation today. And since you mentioned it as part of that, I'll jump into that, and then hopefully we'll have a chance to jump back a little bit, because there's some more stuff I definitely want to talk about in the banking money side for sure. But we were being maybe a little lighthearted, maybe a little bit aloof last week around mask wearing and the whole pandemic story, because I think it's probably obvious by now that both you and I aren't people who support that kind of mentality. But if that belief continues and persists right up until election time in October, and you are elected as mayor, and COVID still, the COVID shutdown, the masks, all of that still exists, how are you going to manage that? How are you going to be able to work with people when they've been used to, having to wear masks and social distance and do all of that? How will you manage that? Do you have any thoughts on how that would work under your mayoralty?
Totally, brother. I was just mentioning to you before we went on air here about another candidate, Kevin J. Johnson. I listened to him speak at this rally that I was at the other day. And he's come, you think I got passion. His passion was directed though, okay? Mine is directed at awakening people to the idea that, debt is an illusion and that monetary, we can create whatever we want. His passion is very much in the legal jurisdiction realm of saying this is wrong and this is bad and that kind of stuff, right? And all I could think of as I listened to him was your question, okay? If this hasn't changed by the time the election rolls around, he doesn't have a hope in hell, because all he's going to get is the protest vote. So what I'm looking for, William, is the awakened vote, or the vote from the people that are using common sense, okay, and saying things like, okay, we've lost 2,000 people, COVID-related deaths out of 4.5 million. We usually lose 25,000 a year. How many did we lose? Somebody could do this math for me. Go ahead and check out how many did we lose last year from the seasonal flu. Those are common sense questions that I'm going to bring forward. So now let's say that it's still going on, just for the sake of argument and for the sake of your question and those out there that are wondering this, which is probably a lot. I would say that my stand would be common sense. Would I dictate anything? I don't have that power. All I would say as the mayor is I'm using common sense and I'm saying this is not a pandemic. This is could be slightly higher than the seasonal flu. I don't know. I'm not seeing those statistics, but 2,000 out of 25 or out of 25,000 and 2,000 out of 4.5 million is so far from a pandemic that it makes me just cringe. Like, who would ever think that that's the truth, that that's a pandemic? And I have complete other sympathy and compassion for every human being who's died, okay? As well as all of those who are suffering from depression and killing themselves over this craziness of controlling people to the masses the way they're doing. And don't tell me they're not dying like that. Like, then it's just happening out there. There's a lot of depression because you're locked at home. You're locked in your freaking hotel room. You're locked in your hospital or your old folks' home. Can't go outside. Thank God I walked past one the other day and I could see all the windows cracked open. And I thought, God, those people have some common sense, because they got to get fresh air. They got to get some sunshine. That's the kind of stuff that's going to help people, not a prick job. And I'll use that language use that to explain what I think of that thing.
Sure. What about the masks themselves? Would you support the mask wearing, or how would you manage that?
I would personally not support that, nor would I support the vaccine. Would I have any power? No, because there's still a council, there's still a city council, there's still the democratic process going on here. But if a mayor can't speak his mind, there's something wrong. And I'm not going to follow any agenda or mainstream media propaganda that we're living in a pandemic, because that's not the truth. That is completely not the truth. When you talk about those numbers that I just presented, a pandemic would see at least 1% of the population dying. At least. We're not even talking about a 0.01% when you talk about 2,000 versus 4.5 million. Here we go back to the mathematics again. Nobody wants to do that math to figure out how insanely low that number is. And they're the ones admitting it on the television, through the media. Our mayor himself came on, and I did watch that one little short video of his saying, you know, almost teared up, saying we passed 2,000 deaths. Mayor Nenshi, we have 4.5 million people in this province. Are you incapable of doing that, just that little tiny bit of math? And then saying that again, repeating yourself? That's all I'm asking. I'm not pointing the finger at you. I'm just asking you to do that tiny little bit of math, Mayor Nenshi.
Right. And I suppose, you know, people could say, you know, and I know you mentioned that you had compassion for, you know, all the folks that did die from COVID related symptoms from, you know, last year and into this year, over the past 12 months, in other words. But I think, just to paraphrase perhaps, but I think your point basically is, and you said it earlier, in fact, you said, you know, that there were 25,000 that you usually lose every year in a 12-month cycle in the Calgary area. So that's like what, one, let's see, out of 13. So like a 1/13 of it, basically, a little more than 10% of the annual death rate. So I'm curious too, as you said, what is that death rate last year for everything combined in Calgary? Was it actually lower? And wouldn't that be interesting if the overall death rate was lower too? So that's quite fascinating.
No doubt, brother. And those numbers I use, the 2,000 and the 25,000, are for the province. Okay, that's not for the city. That's where I got those. But yeah, like, wouldn't it be incredible if those numbers actually, that total number actually dropped, which the potential is there for, because there have been more people consciously not coughing on each other. You know, and again, I'm not supporting the mask by saying that. I'm just saying maybe we could have just learned not to cough into our sleeve and to, you know, stay home if you've got a cold or a flu bug. In the past, our grandmothers told us that. If we would have just continued on that granny said, you know, like, go home and drink a bunch of water, or fast, clean yourself out and take the germs out through autophagy or autophagia, which I'll promote any day of the week. Go home and fast and drink water. You want to see a cold and watch those germs disappear? That's how you're going to get rid of them. Don't drink any milk or any dairy products, because that's going to bring the saliva up and feed the germs and stuff. But if you know, basically fast, guess what happens when you fast? Your body starts to consume itself. It's like Jesus Christ says, you know, like, it's so simple, you know, like, people want to go into this body and blood of Jesus Christ story and talk about that. Well, where do you think Jesus is rising? Where do you think the Christ consciousness is rising? In you. The second coming is in you. So he's telling us all these truths, including the truth that autophagia is not eating somebody else's body for Christ's sake. It's eating your own body through fasting. He promotes fasting. Most other religions do too.
So I think I'm going to take that and that point and actually take us back to where we started from, which was more around the banking, because I started to think about that a little bit when we were talking about corporate backing, and we were talking about you know, what happens if everyone has comfort income, and then all of a sudden there might be a certain, from some people, a lack of motivation, or a shift in motivation, maybe is more accurate to say. But what I imagined, like, I was trying to imagine what that might look like. And so I kind of got the feeling that I got to imagine that there's going to be some people who just hate their jobs and their current jobs, and they'll want to do something else. And with comfort income, that gives them the freedom to switch careers, switch whatever it is that they want to do, and discover something new. So to me, that brings the question in, do you have any thoughts about supplying the ability for people to transition into something that they're more passionate about? I don't know what that might be, but I kind of see that with something like this is a pretty massive shift in consciousness, as you mentioned. But there's going to be adjustment pains. There's going to be growing pains. Comfort income. All of a sudden, woohoo! We got what we want. Now what do I want to do with my life? A lot of people go on vacation, perhaps, but then there's other people that say, "Now I wanted to always pursue that thing that I've always wanted to do, but haven't had the chance. Now I have the chance." Is there any programs or anything? Have you thought that through a little bit to see what you might be able to offer those people who are wanting to do a shift?
Sure, William. That's a great question. And, it's what you said is very much in line with what I'm thinking, is that when a person is comfortable, when they have their home, when they have their food looked after, they're not going to be thinking about survival. So when our minds are not thinking about survival, where do they go? Yes, there'll be a certain amount go on vacation, but when the world shifts into this mindset, there's going to be people wanting to go on vacation here. So then there's some positions that'll open up for, older people to, when I go down to the Calgary airport, for instance, the people that are wearing their white cowboy hat greeting the people coming in from other nations are older people. There's lots of older people that really love people and they really want to make a contribution and do things. And it's our technology's picked up to a point where we can do things like your business. It's not that hard, and it's not that hard for a 60, 70-year-old person who now has grown up with some of that technology. We're not talking about people that grew up through the dirty 30s or that. We're talking about people our age who have actually already become fairly proficient at using an iPhone or a laptop or a computer. So those people will have that opportunity to get into more of that kind of marketing and stuff like that, rather than heading down to that same old globalist agenda Walmart that everybody wants to go to. Well, I can get it online from William, I don't need to. And so there's a process.
Just thinking also that there might be, you don't really know all the different things that will happen if you were to do such a change, but let's play along with that a little bit. I've got to imagine that there might be some businesses that will lose a bunch of employees because they're off doing something else that they love more. And so there's going to be a shift in their workplace, in their need for workers. So there's going to be that. And perhaps some of these businesses can become more efficient. So that there might even be, some money put into streamlining some of these businesses so that they don't need all of those employees that they currently had because it was maybe wasteful or not as beneficial. Do you see anything like that sort of coming up in the works of what you're hoping to do?
Yes. And I see a couple of aspects of that, William. One is that we, the group that I'm involved in on the funding side for projects, is going to show the world in the time frame between now and the election that there is going to be more project funding for new projects, okay? New projects that are going to require people. However, what we've seen in the past is, globalist projects, like I say, that are promoted by this agenda of the governments of the world. And then to supply the labor for that, we've added this idea of immigration, moving people all over the world. So what I'm talking about here is not just Calgary, and that's the key to this. I know I'm trying to bring it back and talk about a Mayoralty race and Calgary in particular. But what we're going to see when I say there's project funding coming to our nonprofit organization and others like ours, that's happening all over the world. Our one funder has 69 groups. There are thousands of accounts like that that are ready to go and ready to start opening up to the world. So once you take that into perspective and say that's going to change in other nations, then why would we continue this immigration policy of just trying to get, cheap labor from other countries to come here? Because it's going to shift in those other countries, project funding coming in, and God help us, those people are going to be looked after with comfort income as well, which is going to take more housing building in nations that these people don't live in houses. There's tons of them down in the US alone. I mean, we have nothing for poverty and street people here compared to the US. And I know why that's going on, but that would get into a bunch more detail. But it has to do with the creation of money at the government level. And the US is different than Canada and the other Commonwealth nations at this point in time. But we are going to shift that as well. So I don't want to get into too much detail there.
Okay. And you can stop me here on this one, but because I kind of did want to go a little bit further into that if there's room to do that. But, it kind of sounds a little bit like not only is this a mayoralty race for yourself, but in some ways it's almost like waking up the Calgarians, and perhaps people not even from Calgary who are watching some of your videos as well, because we're talking about what looks like to me is a fairly significant shift here on how things will be done versus how they are currently being done and have been done for a long, long time. So my thought is there's this money coming from this one funder, but you'd mentioned the 69 groups. And that's not just in Calgary, obviously not just Calgary at all, but it actually globally or around the world. Do you have anything more you can add to that? Like what's creating the change? What's bringing this on? Why the shift now?
Well, let's start with that word, waking up. I think I'm here to inform people as much as wake up, because that seems to be a word that's for the protest side, to poke the finger and say, you're just sleeping, you're just sheep, that kind of thing. No, I'm here to inform people and bring that common sense from those numbers that we just spoke about. And then the common sense from the side of the idea that I don't want to call it socialism, because everyone wants to then jump into that game too and say, oh, the US was in a Democrat mode for so long. It wasn't that long ago George Bush was there and he was a Republican, right? And it wasn't that long ago that we had a conservative government here in Canada. But the agenda was to govern more, okay? And it didn't matter whether it was Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. The agenda of the world was to govern more. And that's not a socialist term, okay? In my mind, that's not a socialist term. That is a proving to us that we can create however much money we want in these corporate level governments. Corporate level, okay, they're not anything but. They can't consider themselves public because they're not telling the truth. If they were telling the truth, they could consider themselves public, but they're telling us bullshit about where money is created. So they're corporate level organizations that are being exposed, and I'm informing you that we are going to move to a more funding-based rather than creation-based society around the world, including Calgary. And, again, going back to what if, William, just for a second, if none of this stuff that I'm talking about starts to happen before the election, of course I'm a long shot. But am I informing along the way? That's as much of my goal as anything, okay? And I don't believe for a second that we're going to be in the same position on an international world level, world being the monetary and and the human construct, right? Mother Earth is fine. You don't give me that bullshit about global warming and all that. We don't have anywhere near the effect that Mother Earth and God have on this plane of existence where we live. So no, I'm not going to eat up any of that crap. But I'm going to say that our world is changing, and our world, our human construct is changing so fast right now as we speak. And by the time the fall rolls around, it will have changed. And people will be considering this their mayor, because who the hell else are they going to pick? Some old-fashioned thinker who still thinks in terms of competition and conservative versus liberal and all that bullshit? That's going to be so far gone down the path by the time September comes, they're not going to even look at those characters.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to what you're saying. To me, yeah, I can see you definitely being labeled as socialist with the comfort income idea. But what I think I'd like to add, if you don't mind, and you can correct me if I'm sort of barking up the wrong tree, but with socialism, there's kind of a catch to it. That like we'll do this, we'll take care of you, but the government is still in charge. Like they're the ones dictating what's going on. What you're saying, the way I'm comprehending it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is here is comfort income. Now go and follow your heart. And there's no restrictions and guides from us. We're happy to help in whatever way we can, but we're not here to tell you what to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. I don't even really want to add any more to that. There's still going to be a certain amount of common law or common sense when it comes to, the harming others, okay, harming them in a monetary fashion or physically or whatever. There's still going to be law. But my idea is that we, the people, as in a republic is the word for we, the people, is going to be how we move forward. And that doesn't, as much as that still will require democracy in some way, it's not going to be mob rule, because common law involves agreement.
Yeah. And you mentioned that's one of your 5 C's, common law. So, that's going to be part of the platform for sure. We don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to touch upon something that happened this week. You put a video out on your channel, and I really loved it. It was respectful. It was heartfelt, a little bit sad because I don't know if you would say lost a dear friend, but I mean, you had a dear friend that left this plane of existence. How about that? A gentleman that you spoke very highly of and was a friend for a long time. And you actually, during that video, you also mentioned that another beloved member of society in the Alberta and Calgary area in particular, former mayor, former premier, Ralph Klein, who had the same initials as you. And it didn't even occur to me until you mentioned that. So I'd like to touch on both a little bit. First of all, can you tell us again the name of the gentleman that was your friend who died this week? And then maybe if we have a few minutes to talk about Ralph Klein a little bit too.
Sure. So yeah, my friend and I lived with him for about 8 months last year, and under the same roof with his wife and another friend. So I got even closer to him, but I've known him for, I don't know, 6-7 years, something like that. And his name is CM Capilano. And I kind of try to say it the way they do, but I call him Capilano, or Cap was his short, but he is, because I don't know about death either in my mind, like he's still here in my mind. His spirit is still here, and that's the way a lot of Native people will speak too. So he is the hereditary leader of the Squamish Nation, and we're not talking about a corporate government organization, this First Nations or whatever they call that. I'm talking about the people. And that man was just a treasure, just a gift to humanity. My God, anybody that met him knew that he was just a rock, and had compassion, had forgiveness, even though he lived a, horrible life, and had, things that happened to those people in our past is just horrendous, right? So I still call that city where you live Capilano. I don't call it Vancouver, because he is the true hereditary leader of that nation and that area of Canada. If you want to even use the word Canada, sometimes it drives me nuts with all these different words and names. But so that's who he is, okay? And yes, a dear friend. And he's fine. He's free now. And, you know, it's all good. He's done his job, and now we have to continue that and continue to tell those stories like I did. And I won't go into that. People want to take a look, they can go back and listen to that video. I told some good stories there.
Yep. And let's wrap it up around a little conversation about Ralph Klein, who happens to have the same initials as you. How about that?
Well, the initial thing, I'm going to share this story because it's fun, okay? And I don't know if I told you this one yet or not, William, but not only is it RK, and my legal jurisdiction name is RK, he died on my birthday. It was really odd when I looked that up. I was doing a little wiki search there the other day, and it was like March 29th. I think it was 2013 when he died, or he, you know, transitioned like Cap. And that was my birthday. So it was like, okay, that's a little bit funny. But anyway, it's all good. I adored that man. And it was like, you want to talk about coming off the cuff. We had BSE when he was the premier in this province. His words as the leader of the province were, what do you need to report him? Shoot him, shovel, and shut up. So he's basically telling the ranchers, don't test your damn cattle for BSE. If they have symptoms like that, put them in the ground, bury them, and shut up. That was his advice. Now there's a leader. I'm telling you, he's not following some agenda of, oh, we got to test every animal now because, you know, this and that bullshit. That whole story was a gong show anyway. You know, it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to go into that one today. But the cute little story, I'll finish up with this one, is that when I was a young man, he was the premier already. And I was I think I was in my late 20s or 30s. And we have a few drinks here and there, you know, and I was up in Edmonton, and we'd go down to the Parliament buildings to see the Purple City, okay, or the legislature, they call it. So the Purple City is that if you stare into the floodlights after you've had a few beer or maybe a toke, I never smoked dope, but I had quite a few beers when I was young. I shouldn't say never, I had a few tokes too. So there you go, you know, air this everywhere. But anyway, you have a few beers and then you stare into those floodlights, and they're kind of orangey floodlights. And then you look out at the city and it changes all the lights, you know, the street lights and everything into purple. So we called it the Purple City experience. And most kids our age would do that, at least, you know, or heard of it, you know, and some of them would be scared to stare into the light or whatever. But it's just a really stunning experience to stare into that floodlight and then look out at the city from the legislative buildings and see the lights. So we were doing that one night and had our few beers, and I had to take a leak. And I, you know, being a young man, and I made my initials in the snow, let's put it that way. And I looked at that night, and then the next day I kind of got back on track again, and I wrote Ralph Klein a letter. And I said, you know what, Ralph? And I was really candid with my letter. I was talking about BSD and all kinds of stuff. And I said, if you want to know who I am, you can go look outside the legislature buildings in the snow, because I made your initials and mine in the snow that day. I never got a reply to that letter, but I thought it was kind of a fun story.
That was definitely unique. Quite the connection with Ralph Klein on that one. The peace story, very good. And you even had a Kamala Harris moment in there too, with talking about the smoking dope. So I think on a light note is a good way to end today's session. But we just kind of got going. I felt like you know, you really got the motor going this week. You got the passion and the drive. You must be feeling it. You must be feeling like, okay, I'm getting this ball rolling. And you know, how does it feel for you? I mean, that's what I'm noticing.
Well, today was day 3 of a fast again. And oftentimes when I go into that, I go into a lot of meditative time. And today it was snowing outside, so I didn't walk much. So I just kind of got myself quite, cleaned out, I guess. And when you do fast, you'd be surprised. Like, it's amazing how your mind clears as well as your body. Like, it's fasting is I highly recommend it. And then I do a Wim Hof breathing exercise every morning, which drives a bunch of oxygen into your brain and then, cleans your lungs as well. All these kind of things I promote that natural healing and that responsibility for your own body. Don't worry about the government always in there intervening with medication and pharmaceuticals and everything. Well, we've got that all set up. Look after yourself. I promote that too. So it's a shift inside and it's a shift outside. We're going through some major stuff here, William, and it's beautiful.
Randall, I think on that note, I will ask you for your weekly blessing and we will wrap things up.
Sounds good. With peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day on mine and William's minds. Abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria. We love you guys, and just keep it up. And we're gonna be walking into that Mayoralty race. I don't like talking about running because I'm 60 years old and I walk lots, but I'll walk into that Mayoralty race and then to that chair.
Randall, thank you very much.
Catch you later. Love you.